Good evening, welcome to ITV News Meridian.
Tonight's headlines in the south. 12 burglaries in 4 weeks, a police manhunt for these serial intruders who terrified women in their New Forest homes.
Next week's strike is on, more misery on the way for Southern Rail passengers as peace talks break down.
Waste not, want not, the teenager from Brighton who wants to change bad household habits.
And making itself at home. Concern grows about the alien species that's smothering our woodland.
If we do nothing, we will start slowly but surely to lose our woodland ground flora that we value so much.
Good evening to you. Imagine the terrifying moment returning home to be confronted by a burglar. That's what happened to 2 women at their homes in the New Forest, and now Hampshire police think the same men could be behind a dozen similar raids across the county.
The first of 12 burglaries happened on September the 10th, with the most recent on Tuesday. 4 of them have been at properties in Chandler's Ford, with others at homes in Kingsombourne, Meonstoke, Totton, Ringwood and Damerham near Fordingbridge.
Well, in most of the burglaries, the men have stolen jewellery and then escaped on motorbikes. Richard Slee has the story.
So I walked around the corner of the house and shouted hello, thinking maybe the delivery man was there.
When Karen Lake saw a motorbike parked in her driveway when she came home to Fordingbridge one afternoon last week, she presumed it was a courier who was dropping off a parcel. Then, just as she noticed her alarm had been activated, a man appeared wearing a helmet from the side of the house.
The helmet just walked calmly past me and out through the gate. I was astonished. I didn't know what was happening. I thought I was having a delivery and a guy was just, walking past me in full motorbike gear.
Another man appeared from behind a hedge and they drove off. When Karen went inside, she saw she'd been the victim of a break-in, and despite her dogs being in the house, she lost a diamond ring and a watch.
I'm really cross, actually. They've come in and they've, broken into my house, and they've been through lots of my stuff, my children's stuff. They've been through pulled out all the drawers and taken some jewellery, my grandmother's engagement ring.
The first of the 12 burglaries was at an address in Chandler's Ford. They're being linked by the police because evidence gathered from CCTV and witnesses reveal the men use stolen motorbikes and target mainly large detached homes, gaining entry by smashing windows or doors at the rear. This increase in the number of house burglaries in rural parts of Hampshire and the New Forest have led the police to increase their patrols, and they're also asking for the public to be much more vigilant.
If they see any people on motorcycles, especially 2 people, acting in a suspicious manner, is to report it to us straight away. If urgent, 999, or use the 101 number. We're appealing to the public to help us to trace these suspects in regards to these incidents.
With dogs and alarms apparently no deterrent to these burglars, the police hope that with the public's help they will be caught soon. Richard Slee, ITV News.
In other news, a man's been jailed for the manslaughter of a man in Basingstoke. Dean Evans, who was 31, was stabbed in the stomach outside his house in Benham Road last October. He later died in hospital. 20-year-old Liam Darville will serve 11 years in a young offenders institution.
50 firefighters from across Dorset and Wiltshire tackled a barn fire last night. Hundreds of tons of hay and straw were inside the barn near Cranbourne.
The Ryde Arena, the Isle of Wight's only ice rink, closed unexpectedly today with bailiffs entering the building. The ice rink posted on its Facebook page that it's trying to resolve a dispute with the landlord. The rink only reopened 2 months ago following major repairs. The venue was taken over by a community group last year.
3 days of strikes on Southern Rail will go ahead next week after last-ditch peace talks between the company and union leaders broke down earlier.
Passengers in Sussex, Surrey and Hampshire are being warned of 14 days of disruption over the next 2 months. This was the reaction outside Brighton station.
My daughter's got a hospital appointment which we're going to have to cancel because of that, and just wish it could be sorted out.
I pay nearly £5,000 for my season ticket and you have to ask yourself, what am I paying for? The service is poor, it's always delayed. I have to get up at 5:30 to get to work. It's just not acceptable.
I'm with the conductors and I'm with them because unit for safety. Look at me, I'm disabled. Anything happens, who's going to help me?
Can't believe in this day and age we haven't got a functioning railway system. It's pathetic.
Southern says it will now impose the changes which will see drivers closing train doors from January. Guards will now have the option of agreeing to the new terms or losing their jobs. Our transport correspondent Mike Pearce sends this.
Well, both sides came to the peace talks here in central London, but after 3 hours they broke down. The RMT unions say they put forward new proposals they hoped might settle the dispute, but they say they were rejected by Southern. They say the company also rejected new peace talks at ACAS. Now, the companies say there was nothing new in what the RMT was suggesting, so they will now go ahead and implement their plans. They say if staff do not agree to the new working conditions from January, effectively they'll be putting themselves out of a job. Of course, all this centres on the role of the guard. The company want train drivers to close train doors, not guards. The unions say that will not be safe and they want them to continue doing that. As things stand tonight, next week's 3-day strike is on.
Very disappointing. We're in a situation where our members now are going to have to continue to fight for their jobs, and I hope Southern don't issue those sacking notices tomorrow, because that would be an absolute disgrace. These are ordinary working people who are fighting to keep a safe and efficient railway.
My request to the RMT is you can call these strikes off. That's within your gift. You need to do that.
You won't move, they won't move.
But it's this method of operation with the driver having sole responsibility for operating the train is a safe method of operation. We have said where there is a second person on the train today, there will be that person going forward, and to bring this to an end, we just need to make that happen now.
Well, Southern say it will do everything possible next week to run as many trains as possible, and on some routes buses will replace trains. But for passengers, things could not be worse. 3 days of strikes next week. Mike Pearce, ITV News, Central London.
And all the strike dates can be found on our website. The address is coming up.
More news. The organisers of the Isle of Wight Festival say they may be forced to move the event unless they can hire the site for free. Solo Promoters Limited want the current £55,000 fee to hire Seaclose Park in Newport waived by the council. The request will be considered next week.
One of Brighton's most famous landmarks, the West Pier, is being illuminated this evening to mark its 150th anniversary. The pier opened to the public in 1866 but closed in 1975, falling into disrepair. It was almost completely destroyed by 2 fires in 2003. There are calls to save the pier and preserve it as a work of art.
You're watching ITV News here in the Meridian region. Coming up.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Inhalers are important. Let me tell you why. Whether you're a nurse or doctor.
The doctor who's found his own unique way of helping asthma sufferers.
For all of our stories, head to itv.com/Meridian. Call us or get in touch via Facebook or Twitter.
And the ITV Evening News continues with the national and international news at 6:30. With more now, Charlene White.
Coming up, a UKIP Euro MP is in hospital after claims of a row at a party meeting in Strasbourg. Stephen Wolf is one of the favourites to become the party leader. He collapsed in the European Parliament and has undergone a brain scan. The government backs fracking in Lancashire despite local objections. And we have the latest warning about the tumble dryers that can catch fire. Join Mark Austin and me at 6:30.
We will, thank you very much indeed. Now, asthma is a condition that affects over 600,000 people here in the south and southeast and is often triggered by pollution, stress and dust.
Well, here are some of the facts. 1 in every 11 children suffer with asthma. That's 3 per classroom. 1 in 12 adults have it, and the UK has some of the highest rates in Europe. And every 8 minutes someone is taken to hospital because of asthma.
Well, now, one GP wants to make sure those who have the condition are using their inhalers properly. He's come up with his own rather individual way to get his message across.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Inhalers are important. Let me tell you why. Whether you're a nurse or doctor, especially a patient, inhalers save lives, so pay attention.
Dr. Tapas Mukherjee came up with the idea for the video. He says there's a technique to using an inhaler and people with asthma aren't shown how, but that's not the only problem.
The type of inhaler they use is often not the best one for controlling asthma. And so in the video, and in line with the new British Thoracic Society guidelines, we encourage them to not overuse a blue inhaler, but to use a regular preventer inhaler instead, which is often an inhaled steroid.
What's the difference?
The difference is that the blue inhaler is a little bit like putting a sticking plaster over the problem. It doesn't treat the underlying asthma, whereas the inhaled steroid can keep your asthma at bay.
A little bit of shaking and breathe out. Place between your lips, finger and thumb. Now breathe in, push down as you do. Inhale slowly, all the way through. Once you're done inhaling, then hold your breath, around 10 seconds, and then rest.
Amna Suleiman was admitted to hospital after she had an asthma attack. She was diagnosed with the condition 18 months ago. Amna believes the video will help a lot of people.
I really liked it because it's simple, funny, and has a lot of information. It's nice. It makes you happy.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Everybody in the house, come along, let's try.
A fun video, a catchy video, but a very serious message. And you can watch the video in full on our website.
Right, it's 32 days until the US general election. It seems many people this side of the pond are just as interested in the race for the White House as the Americans themselves.
Well, in a moment, we'll be speaking to ITV's Washington correspondent, Robert Moore. But first, with 20,000 Americans living in our region, what's their take on Donald Trump versus Hillary Clinton? Malcolm Shaw's been finding out.
It's one of the most bitterly fought presidential campaigns in history. So will the career politician Hillary Clinton win, or can the outspoken maverick Donald Trump triumph? Kate Trippick is one of around 20,000 Americans living in our region.
I think Americans widely mistrust and dislike the current choice of candidates. And that's putting Americans in a position to choose the candidate that they dislike the least, which is a horrible position to be in.
But how will the result of the US election affect us in the UK? That's the subject of much discussion at the University of Sussex. Melissa Malevsky is an American now teaching here.
I just cast my ballot 2 days ago, so an absentee ballot for Hillary. No, I have to admit that I was not her biggest fan, but in the end, I mean, it's a vote to not have Trump for president.
Freya Lord-Jones recently returned from a year in the States and was surprised by how much support Donald Trump has generated.
He says what sections of the country are feeling, and it doesn't really matter if it's the facts, and that is appealing to people because it suggests that he's going to have a solution for them, and it suggests that he's given them a voice.
Latest polls put Hillary Clinton ahead, but not by much. And remember, most polls here got it wrong about Brexit.
We've seen some parallels in this country. The rise of UKIP, the influence of Nigel Farage. Those parallels are not precise ones, but nonetheless, the same kind of anti-establishment populism has gained increasing political currency on both sides of the Atlantic.
US voters go to the polls on the 8th of November. The new president will be inaugurated next January. Malcolm Shaw, ITV News.
Well, let's speak to ITV's Washington correspondent, Robert Moore. Robert, you've been working in America for 10 years. This is being called the strangest election America has ever seen. Is that how you see it?
Oh, I mean, absolutely. I mean, the documentary I make and is going out shortly really is something of a confessional. You know, I'm paid to try and understand American politics, and yet Donald Trump was a phenomenon I did not see coming. So I really felt quite ambushed. So what I decided to do was to go back to the kind of American heartland, if you like, and re-listen to people to see if I missed some key indications that a man like Donald Trump, with his incendiary language, was actually kind of trying to break through. And I found exactly that. I found that people had been waiting for somebody who was politically incorrect, who loathed the trade deals, who wanted to kind of attack Washington, D.C., this city behind me. So it was a lesson for me. It was a bit of a confession, but I learned a great deal.
You've mentioned your programme, ITV Tonight, going out, called Trump's America, Will It Happen? We have a clip of some people knocking on the door, campaigning for Trump.
Hello. Hello, sir. We're campaigning for Donald Trump.
Hey, get the hell out of here.
Really?
I would never vote for that racist in my entire life.
Why do you think he's a racist? Huh? Why do you think he's racist?
Because of everything he says out of his mouth. He hates Mexican, he hates blacks, he hates women. You can vote for that pig if you want to, not me.
Lively stuff, to say the least. Was that a common reaction?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, the key to understanding this election is not only that it could be much closer than we imagine, but that it is deeply, deeply divisive. You know, it is pitching neighbour against neighbour, and in some cases, literally family members against family members. I met people in Ohio who are no longer talking to their own parents or their own brother-in-laws because of the sort of friction and tension about Donald Trump. Those who loathe him hate him with a kind of with a passion, and those who support him are unbelievably loyal to him, even through every gaffe and blunder that he makes. So he is proving a really divisive character that makes the question about how America will be ruled after the election a very real concern for those who look at the past and say, look, this was a pretty stable and united country, and who fear that in the future that may not be the case.
It's on ITV Tonight at 7:30. We shall watch with fascination. Robert Moore, thank you very much.
Now, every year we waste more than 10 million tonnes of food in the UK, and much of that is still edible.
Now, one teenager from Brighton who's so appalled at the amount thrown away is urging us all to be more careful and less picky to help save the planet.
Yes, George Gavin has joined up with Fixers, the campaign that gives young people a voice to highlight the ongoing problem with food waste.
My name's George Gavin, I'm 17 and I live near Brighton. My Fixers project is aimed at getting people to not waste as much food.
The thing I'd probably throw most away would be bread.
The food I waste the most is rice and spinach.
I do always cook a little extra than what you need.
I also want to encourage supermarkets to do even more to reduce the amount of waste of food. Here in Brighton, 1/3 of all our waste is food, and half of that is food we could eat. People are wasting food by buying too much food so it goes off, and by cooking large portions that then get wasted because they can't actually eat that amount of food. Buying food that they don't actually want, so they'll try something out and then throw it away.
I am shocked when you go out for dinner with someone or when you go around someone's house. Like, they would cook something, they'll put it on their plate, and then there'll be loads in the kitchen, and then they'd just go, I was going to throw it in the bin. I said, don't throw it in the bin, give it to me.
I'm not allowed to waste food, but no, I probably would if it was down to me. I'd be more likely to throw things away.
I work in a supermarket, and if something's past the sell-by date, not necessarily the use-by date, we'd throw it away, even though the food's actually still edible.
George is absolutely right to be concerned about the issue of food waste. We know that it's still a big issue across the entire food chain, from farms to supermarkets to restaurants to households. Everyone is still producing way more food waste than we should be. At the household level, the cost of food waste is up to £700 a year for the average family.
Supermarkets are definitely doing work to reduce the amount of food waste, because there is a huge amount from supermarkets at the moment. But I still feel they've got a long way to go because they're still encouraging people to buy more food than they really need. I now volunteer for an organisation that has an arrangement with local supermarkets to take in food that will be thrown away. Food is collected from supermarkets and brought to the cafe, where it's weighed and sorted and then cooked. You can pay as much as you want or as little as you want for the food.
There will be a reason that they've thrown it away. It'll just be
because an apple has got that in it, and the customer won't buy a bag of apples if they see one like that. And I find it interesting to see where the apples have come from. Some of them have flown halfway around the world.
Food being brought in from all over the world does annoy me because it means that we could be growing food here, but we're relying on other countries to do it, which causes a lot of energy to be wasted and a lot of carbon to be released into the atmosphere.
These apples here have come all the way from New Zealand.
Yeah, only to be thrown away.
Only to end up in a bin in Brighton.
I think if we didn't waste as much food, we wouldn't need as much food coming into the country, which would reduce the amount of carbon emissions that are being released. The message I want to get across is that food waste is linked to global climate change, and it's a problem we can easily solve by not wasting food. It's a problem that we can solve right now if we tried.
Good message from George there. Well, for more information about Fixers, head to fixers.org.uk/food.
Now, rhododendrons arrived in this country in 1763. They've been doing very well ever since, but not everyone's happy about one particular variety.
Yes, they may look beautiful, but the alien species known as Rhododendron ponticum kills off native plants and animals. That's why areas of woodland in our region have had control and removal programmes in place.
Back in 2011 on Brownsea Island, rhododendrons were cut down to help one of the country's most endangered species, the red squirrel. The bushes were taking over the island and so depriving the squirrels of their food source.
But what's involved in tackling the resistant plant? Bob Cruz has been finding out.
There are many cultivated species of rhododendron which add colour to gardens, but this one, Rhododendron ponticum, is a pest, a wild escapee which has been spreading for 100 years. In this woodland managed by the Forestry Commission, it's crowding out the native snowdrops and bluebells.
This is a classic English mixed broadleaf woodland. You've got the canopy of trees underneath, you've got a healthy array of ferns, and in the spring it's an absolute picture in the areas that aren't dominated by the rhododendron, because that is just smothering out everything underneath it. Just here at the edge of the rhododendron, you can see nothing alive under there. It's a dense sea of rhododendron leaves. There's no chance any native flora can germinate in that dense, dark shade.
There's another problem. It also harbours Phytophthora ramorum, or sudden larch death, a very damaging tree disease. A new study for the Forestry Commission shows more than 3% of the nation's woodland is now covered with this rhododendron, and it's creeping forward all the time.
It's not a very, very fast spreader, but once it's in a woodland, it's actually quite difficult to eradicate. If we do nothing, we will start slowly but surely to lose our woodland ground flora that we value so much, particularly in the ancient woodlands.
Cutting it back is a waste of time. In a few years, it just grows back. For real success, it has to be poisoned. The orange mark on the stem here shows that this is one of the plants that was treated with a herbicide last summer. They drill a hole into the trunk and then just put a couple of drops of herbicide. That's enough to kill the entire plant.
It's incredibly effective, and we leave it standing to just decay. That'll be a habitat now for the deadwood bugs and beasties, which are an essential part of the ecosystem. Yeah, recreating woodland by using the dead material as it is.
Poisoning isn't a realistic option everywhere. This area used to be an impenetrable thicket, more than 3 metres high. Here they used heavy machinery to shred the rhododendron, root and branch, and it seems to have worked.
You can start to see woodland flora beginning to re-establish itself. So there's a few brambles, some wild raspberries, some ferns, just beginning to creep back in. We've turned back time and started to recreate woodland habitat and then let nature take its course from here on in. It might be decades, hundreds of years before the really rich woodland ground flora and all the biodiversity can really creep back in, because ancient woodland you can't just recreate at the click of a fingers.
In this wood, they're 3 years into a 5-year programme of eradication, which will need to be expanded if this aggressive weed is to be controlled. Bob Cruz, ITV News.
Former Southampton footballer Matt Le Tissier and his wife Angela were match winners last night when they won £30,000 for Naomi House Hospice. They won ITV's Mr. and Mrs. show and hit the jackpot when Matt correctly guessed who his wife's childhood crush had been, his former Saints teammate, Mickey Adams.
I've narrowed it down to 2, I think.
What you going to go with?
I'm going to go with Mickey Adams.
Yeah! I tell you what.
Thank God he's not watching this.
Everyone at Naomi House near Winchester was thrilled to watch Mr. and Mrs. Letitia triumph. The hospice, of course, helps youngsters from across the south. They told us the unexpected windfall will be put to great use.
£30,000 is a great sum for us, and it can go to a range of things to support children and families here at Naomi House and Jack's Place. We can spend that on nurses' salaries, we can take children out for days out in our minibuses. Matt and Angela, thanks ever so much for everything you do for us and for your years of support. We really do appreciate it.
Well done. Did you have a childhood crush?
Oh yeah, you know who it is.
George Michael.
Yeah, still to this day. Did you have one?
My grandmother did. Simon Parkin.
There was no need for that, was there? Farrah Fawcett Majors, incidentally, the poster on my wall. But I have a bit of passion for you now. Oh. Interesting picture that came in. Have a look at this. This was from Gaz Moore in Portsmouth, who came across a still active sunflower, if I'm not mistaken. Yes. And that there is the location for a bee and a ladybird to have a secret dinner date. God. Well, the ladybird didn't want to be spotted, but that's not easy. Chris in Bognor Regis, thanks, ended up giving a bee dinner, flagging during the recent hot weather, so he had to give it a spoonful of honey to get it going. Look at that, amazing. That's good. And some brilliant pictures. That's a couple of wasps, look, on Jeff Smith's passion flower on the Isle of Wight. Isn't that amazing? Yeah. And here's a lovely one, a bee full of pollen, look. This is in Andy Adair. He came across it while walking the dog in Alverstoke, and one even more covered look in Rose Shipham's garden in Stenning last week. Isn't that amazing? So some brilliant pictures. Meridian weather at ITV.com if you've got any more.
Lovely weather for bees?
Pretty good.
Pretty good. Let's find out. Here he is, Simon Parkin.
From blizzards to pool, driving through Europe. Eurotunnel the Shuttle sponsors ITV Meridian weather.
So, did you spot the subtle changes with today's weather? As planned, there was a bit more cloud around, as displayed by Mick's picture from Highcliffe from first thing, although you could still see the Isle of Wight, look. And secondly, the sea wasn't quite so choppy. This was yesterday, lovely blue sky in Swanage, but you wouldn't want to be in a boat. Today, the wind a bit calmer, but coming from a cooler direction, so disappointing temperatures that are going to stay with us through the weekend. The rest of Europe still doing quite nicely with some decent warmth and sunshine for us, 14, 15, which is a couple of degrees below where we should be for this time of year. That said, fair bit of cloud around tonight, and that breeze staying with us means it shouldn't get too cold. You'll also notice a few flecks of blue over the sea, 1 or 2 inland. That means we could see perhaps an odd shower cropping up during the night, but most of us will stay dry. And as for the temperatures, 7 or 8 in some rural spots, 9 or 10 quite generally. As I say, not much of a breeze around either. And tomorrow there will be more showers cropping up, but still fairly few and far between. They'll be short-lived affairs and there'll be light showers, so a lot of us staying dry tomorrow. It looks like there's a lot of cloud shadow on the map, but there will be some decent bright or sunny spells. Temperatures 14, 15, and as for the winds, well, we're looking at 10 miles an hour inland along the coast around the Isle of Wight. We could see winds of around 15 miles an hour, maybe an odd 20-mile-an-hour gust. As for your high tide times, you can see in Portland 25 past 10 in the morning, then 10 to 11 in the evening, and then for the weekend, well, Saturday will be another chance of seeing an odd shower cropping up, but a fair bit of dry weather around. Same story on Sunday, a few more showers on Monday.
Eurotunnel the Shuttle sponsors ITV Meridian weather.
In just a moment, we've got the ITV Evening News tonight with Charlene White and Mark Austin.
Sangeeta's got our late news. Do make a point of tuning into her. But for now, from the team here at ITV Meridian, thank you very much indeed for watching. Take care. See you soon.
See you later. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.